Hey guys, I just want to let you know, I had some lighting issues while making this video, just a heads up. Um, yeah, I was trying to figure out why I was making the video. It's definitely something I should get a better handle on in the future, but yeah, if any of you are wondering why the lighting is the way it is, that's why. I apologize in advance. Hope you guys still enjoy the video. That's all I have. That's all I got. Enjoy. Hello guys, I'm Zach the Movie Fan, and it's my birthday today. I'm officially 25 years old now. And, yeah. And, yeah, and because of that, and because I want to get back into a upload routine, we're going to do something special. Something that I've always wanted to do for my channel. A list of my 10 favorite horror films. You see, I grew up watching the early days of YouTube. Before Mr. Beast, before the anti-woke crowd, before the whole culture war in general. No, just back in those simple days where some fans of media dressed up in a goofy outfit and talked about movies or video games or comics while cracking jokes. The era of the angry video game nerd, the nostalgia critic, Linkara, Spoonie, back when those guys were the kings of movie criticism on the internet. And how much I miss that era, but regardless, during that time, another thing that was very popular were top 10 lists. Hell, you could argue top 10 lists is what made Watch Mojo's channel a behemoth today. So I've always wanted to do my own top 10 list myself, even if top 10 lists are definitely kind of out of date nowadays. I mean, don't get me wrong, you'll still see them, and they are still kind of popular, but I think ranking videos have mostly taken over top 10s in terms of popularity. Regardless, I've always wanted to do my own top 10 list, and why not do a list of my favorite horror films? Because you guys may have obviously noticed that despite the fact that my channel is called Zach the Movie Fan, I usually talk about horror films. So, yeah, let's do that. This is a list of my 10 favorite horror films. I should say that, these are all my personal opinion, and I would actually like to know what your favorite horror films are down in the comments below. But yeah, with that being said, let's do this. These are my top 10 favorite horror films. Starting off at number 10 is The Hitcher. Now, this one is a lot lesser known compared to most other critically acclaimed horror films. And let me just be the first to say that is incredibly tragic, because The Hitcher is an absolutely fantastic horror film that truly does not get enough recognition. The Hitcher tells the story of a young man named Jim, played by C. Thomas Howell. At night, he picks up a hitchhiker named John Ryder, played by Rutger Hauer. However, little does Jim know that John is actually a serial killer. But before John could do Jim in, Jim gets the upper hand and kicks him out of his car. But unfortunately, it does not end there. The very next day, the Hitcher manages to catch up with Jim, murders a family, and frames Jim for the murder. The rest of the film is a wild cat and mouse chase between Jim, the Hitcher, and the law caught in between. There is so much to really love about this film. It's kind of like a mixture blend of a bunch of different things. It's It's kind of a slasher film, but it's also kind of a suspense thriller, a car chase movie. It's like an amalgamation of a certain assortment of different movie genres, but it really works well here. The acting in the film is fantastic. C. Thomas Howell does a fantastic job showing this young kid who is put in this horrible, terrifying situation, being stalked by this guy and being framed for murder. One of the best things too is how he does a legit good job showing how the events of the film really change him, going from a young, innocent, naive kid to a cold, almost empty inside survivor. Rutger Hauer is also fantastic in this film, managing to be both equally terrifying, but also kind of a badass. He can be really scary and suspenseful, but he also gives off a bit of an action hero vibe, especially considering in some scenes he's able to completely obliterate an entire police station, or take out a bunch of cops in a helicopter on the road. Like, honestly, John Ryder, the Hitcher, is a very underrated villain. I'm surprised nobody talks about this guy as much as other slasher villains. Bottom line, The Hitcher is a underrated masterpiece. In case you're wondering why you've never heard of it, that's mostly because it did not perform well financially at the time, and critics were really harsh to it. The other reason is that this film is not streaming anywhere. From what I understand, there was a streaming service named, I think, Cinephile, that did have The Hitcher on their site. And if you look up the film on YouTube, it says you'll have to have a Cinephile or whatever subscription in order to watch it. But that's a fucking lie. I looked it up. I'm pretty sure that streaming service has been dead for God knows how long. So how do you watch the film streaming today? You don't. In fact, as you can tell, I own this film on DVD, hence the wacky menu in the back. And I had to do that because it's not streaming anywhere. The only way to watch this film today is to find a physical copy, which I did via eBay. I did hear, however, that they finally came out with a Blu-ray 4K resolution version. So try and find that version. It is a legit damn shame that this film is so hard to find today. In fact, to make it even sadder, it's actually easier to find the garbage remake of the Hitcher than the original. Yes, let me repeat that. It is easier to find the remake than the original. I don't have a joke there, I just find that sad. But whatever. Point is, if you can find The Hitcher anywhere, check it out for yourself, give it a watch, you won't be disappointed. Movies like this are the reason why you never pick up Hitchhikers. At number 9 is Sinister. I apologize for the lighting. For some reason, my phone camera is being really weird about lighting today. I don't know why. Anyway, Sinister. This is a movie that gets a divisive reception. There are some people that really enjoy this film and some that really don't. And I think a big reason for that is because of the trailer. I'm going to be honest, if you go into this movie, or if you want to watch it for yourself, I recommend not watching any trailers or advertising, because the trailers really do give away way too much about the film. It is better to just go right into the film. But yeah, as such, I'm going to be keeping my summary of this film very spoiler-free, only going to explain the main setup, and what I enjoy about the film. The movie tells the story of a father who's a true crime novelist, played by Ethan Hawke. He moves into a house alongside his family. Um, this is because the family that originally lived in the house had died, supposedly of murder. And because the father's career is on the rocks, he thinks that if he writes a book on the murders that happened in this house, it could save his career. And his instincts are good, perhaps a little too good, as while exploring the house, he finds a bunch of Super 8 reels in the attic. Which for younger people who have no idea what that is, they're just like really old camera film. I mean, yeah. The father decides to watch the tapes and finds that it's basically an assortment of snuff films showing the deaths of not only the family that lived in the house, but also a bunch of other different families. Thinking that it's all connected, the father tries to find out what connects this whole family. And that's all I'm going to tell you. What is so brilliant about this film is that the movie really does throw you through a curveball. Not like the first half of this, you think it's going to be like a true crime kind of horror film. So he's gonna like try and find a connection, and then maybe like the real killer will go after him or something like that. But let me tell you, the direction the film goes in really does throw you for a curveball. Again, if you don't watch any trailers. The acting in the film is really good. I especially like Ethan Hawke's character a lot in this film. I hear that, I hear like, because I mentioned this in my review of Lee Cronin's The Mummy, Ethan Hawke's character doesn't get a lot of love from people, and I get that, but to me, he doesn't come off as a shitty father. He just comes off as more relatable. He's just this guy who wants to get his career back up. And he does still care for his family. It's just that he's so desperate in that chase to recapture his glory days that he completely forgets about the legacy he actually has right in front of him, his family. On top of that, the soundtrack for Sinister is absolutely unnerving. And that's probably because it's not really much of a soundtrack. The best way I can describe Sinister's soundtrack is imagine a Super 8 film reel being ripped in half and then played, along with like the sound of a scratching record, and that's really the best way I can describe the soundtrack. It's an unnerving soundtrack using like just the simplest sounds and morphing them into a sick, twisted tune that reminds me a lot of the soundtrack in the Silent Hill games. Overall, Sinister is a fantastic horror film. I definitely recommend it if you haven't seen it already. Again, if you go into this movie, though, don't watch any trailers. The trailers will legit reveal way too much about the film. Just take my word on that, okay? But yeah. Sinister is a divisive horror film, but it's one that I personally feel does deserve a lot more respect. And number 8 is A Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, do I even need to really go on from this? It's A Nightmare on fucking Elm Street, for Christ's sakes. You know what is arguably one of the most beloved horror films to come out of the 80s? And trust me, that's saying a lot. But I'll keep it brief. What is undoubtedly one of Wes Craven's greatest films, and trust me, that's saying a lot, A Nightmare on Elm Street follows a group of young teens that all start dreaming about a mysterious, creepy man named Freddy Krueger. This monster somehow has the ability to enter the kids' dreams and kill them in their dreams. We follow one of the kids, Nancy, played by Heather Langenkamp, who tries to find a way to defeat this monster. That really is the premise in a nutshell. Again, what can I say about this film that hasn't already been said? The soundtrack by Charles Bernstein, one of the most chilling soundtracks in horror film history, sounding like a nice lullaby from hell. The acting, pretty damn solid. I mean, sure, some of it, I guess, can be seen as a bit corny today, but everybody does a great job. The two standouts are definitely Heather Langenkamp as Nancy, and of course Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, the main antagonist. And interesting story. When I was a kid, I never really got into Freddy Krueger that much. And a lot of that's because when I was a kid, I never saw the original Nightmare on Elm Street. I only saw the sequels, which, if you don't know, went for a much more goofy tone. I don't know. I think because the sequels were a lot goofier, I always kind of saw Freddy as a joke and never really found him that frightening. This film, however, he is terrifying. I mean, yeah, you could tell Robert Englund is having fun in the role, cracking this evil, sinister smile, and just relishing in the torment he gives people, but it's not over the top like it is in the sequels. It's like chilling and so unsettling. You just get the feeling that this guy just relishes in the torture and torment he gives these poor people. In other words, he's a sick bastard. I mean, what else can I say? It has great suspense, tension, and atmosphere. Freddy Krueger is scary as hell, as well as iconic. Nancy is an absolute badass who takes Freddy out using booby traps and shit. It's a Nightmare on Elm Street. There's literally nothing else I can say about it that hasn't already been said. It is a masterpiece, and is without question Wes Craven's magnum opus. At number 7 for me is Carrie. Now, I will freely admit, this is mostly a personal preference kind of thing. Honestly, there are a select number of Stephen King movies that I could have put on my list, because there are some Stephen King movies that I really enjoy. From the original Pet Sematary to the It movie, the one with Bill Skarsgård, to Misery, or The Shining. And while I really do enjoy those films, Carrie is still my absolute favorite. Mostly because it is the one that scared the hell out of me the most. Out of all the Stephen King movies I have seen, or films based on Stephen King's work, this is the one that legit got under my skin and freaked me out the most. Carrie tells the story of a high school girl named, Carrie, played by Sissy Spacek. She is a high school outcast and treated as everyone's punching bag. And when she's not being treated as a punching bag at high school, she's being beaten and traumatized by her crazy religious nut mother, Margaret. All Carrie wants is to just have one day where she is at least happy and not laughed at. And she now gets the power to get what she wants. Carrie discovers that she has telekinesis, the ability to move things or objects with her mind. With this power, she wants to finally get that one nice thing, and that one nice thing is going to the high school prom. But when even there everyone makes fun of her, she finally snaps. Carrie is one of those films that is unfortunately still relevant today than when it first came out. You could actually make the very fair argument that, like, bullying in schools has honestly just gotten worse in more recent years. Yeah, the thing that makes Carrie just so unsettling is just the uncomfortable atmosphere of it all. Brian De Palma's direction just really knows how to freak you the hell out and make you feel uncomfortable as hell. Sissy Spacek as Carrie White is absolutely terrifying in this film. But there still is enough there to make you feel sympathetic for her at the same time. But again, just what really gets under this film is just like how miserable the film makes you feel and just how sorry you feel for Carrie. You legit do want to see her get what she wants, and it is heartbreaking when she continuously doesn't get it. And when she finally snaps at the infamous prom scene, it is one of the most terrifying crash outs in horror film history. Justified, but horrifying nonetheless. The death glare that Sissy Spacek gives. Like, hold on. This face right here, this death glare that Sissy Spacek gives, is one of the most terrifying death glares you will ever see in any horror film. It is the kind of face that you would see before you die. Like, Carrie is, however, Carrie is terrifying not just because of this death glare or the way she kills people. It's terrifying because of how it just captures the horrors of teenage life for people who had it rough. It captures the misery of being bullied, abused to the breaking point. And yeah. And honestly, the fact that like more people don't look at this film as a reason to be a lot harsher towards bullying is honestly sad. There are some things in life that will never change, unfortunately. Number 6 is actually going to be a tie between two films. This is most because both films came out around the same time. And both are black and white films, so I feel it's fair to put them in the same crowd. Let's start off with Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. I already talked about this film a bit when I reviewed the garbage shot-for-shot remake last year in October, so I'll keep this brief. This is undoubtedly one of my favorite Hitchcock films. A fantastic film filled with suspense, tension, and atmosphere that while not be as effective today, it still is a very engaging and entertaining and disturbing story. Top it off with fantastic acting, especially from Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates. Not to mention the fantastic score by composer Bernard Herrmann that just fits the movie like a glove. It's a masterpiece of a film that has one of the most iconic villains, most iconic film scores, most iconic death scenes, and most iconic twist endings. I mean, like Nightmare on Elm Street, what else can I say about this movie that hasn't already been said? There is reason it still stands as one of Alfred Hitchcock's most iconic films. The other part of number 6 is The Haunting, the original. The Haunting has been getting a bit more recognition in more recent years, and honestly, I can say it's well deserved. The Haunting tells the story of a scientist who is running an experiment on a supposedly haunted house called Hill House, and hires a bunch of people to help him in his experiments. And that's pretty much it. That's the whole setup in a nutshell. What makes this film so brilliant, though, is that it does not tell you if the house is really haunted. You see, the main character of the film, Eleanor, played by Julie Harris, she's not the most mentally well. So when freaky stuff happens in the film, you're wondering how much of it is actually ghosts or if it's just Eleanor losing her mind. Yeah. In fact, The Haunting was actually one of the first films to create the whole "the fear comes from what you don't see rather than what you do" trick. Some of the films like Paranormal Activity, The Others, and The Blair Witch Project also did. But The Haunting perfected it by not only having good atmosphere and suspense, but also giving us a cast of characters we can actually like, and remember. All the characters do have personality to them and are likable. Even Luke, who's a comic relief type character, even he has a lot of charm and charisma to him, and none of his gags feel annoying. It's a fantastic ghost movie that is brilliantly done with great suspense, tension, atmosphere, gothic storytelling, as well as always keeping you guessing and keeping it ambiguous whether the place is actually haunted or if it's just through the perspective of a nutcase. I mean, what else can I say about The Haunting that others haven't already said? If you haven't seen this film, I really do recommend it, even if you don't like black and white films. Really give this film a shot. Hell, give both The Haunting and Psycho a shot. You may legit be surprised. But yeah, Psycho and The Haunting. Easily two of my favorite black and white horror films. At number 5, we have the original Black Christmas. I already did a review of this film last year in December, so I'll keep it brief. Directed by Bob Clark, the same man who wrote and directed A Christmas Story. Yes, really. Black Christmas definitely is a horror film that's gotten more and more recognition as the years have went on, and for good reason. It's a genuinely moody and unsettling film, being one of those few Christmas horror films that goes for a darker, bleaker, serious tone compared to other films like, say, Krampus or Jack Frost that go for more of a comedic edge. Now, there have been horror films that have tried to go for a more serious tone. In fact, I reviewed another Christmas movie that attempted that, the original Silent Night, Deadly Night. The big difference, however, is that while Silent Night, Deadly Night tried and didn't exactly succeed 100%, Black Christmas does. It is a genuinely unsettling film, especially thanks to its killer. The killer in this film is legitimately unsettling. The phone calls that he gives make no goddamn sense. We don't learn a motive, we don't learn a face, we don't learn a backstory, we don't learn anything. Making this killer probably one of the most realistic slasher villains in film history. He doesn't even feel like a slasher villain, he feels like a legit fucking serial killer. To the point that he even has mental breakdowns at some points. The characters are also incredibly likable, not to mention the film is also surprisingly progressive. You see, this film was made around the same time as Roe v. Wade happening, and the movie does address that. There was a subplot in the film about abortion, but it doesn't take up the entire film. It's subtle, which is more than I can say for one of the remakes of Black Christmas. And don't worry, one of these days we will get to that remake. Yeah. Top it off with a great cast that includes Margot Kidder, who is a lot of fun in the film, and the always badass and awesome John Saxon, and you have a slasher classic that really did pave the way for future films. The original Black Christmas truly is a masterpiece, and it's unfortunate that it got not one, but two of the worst remakes in horror history. It truly is unfortunate. At number 4 is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's hard to really think of what else to say about this film that hasn't already been said, so I'll keep it brief. Directed by Tobe Hooper, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is genuinely an unsettling film still to this day. And a lot of it is because the whole film is shot and done like you're watching a real life murder story. Obviously, everything that happens in this film is fictional. But like the gritty, realistic tone that the film goes for really does put you in that uncomfortable atmosphere that makes you feel like you're watching a really fucked up story about a family of cannibalistic serial killers. The imagery in the film is still greatly unsettling to this day. The furniture made out of human bones, the lamps made out of peeled faces. It's just so nightmare-inducing. Leatherface is absolutely terrifying here. He's not a goofy slasher villain or an obnoxious jackass like in the sequels. He is genuinely terrifying in this film, especially because he only communicates in what sounds like animal grunts and sounds. His family is just as fucked up, if not worse. We got a psychopathic hitchhiker that always does these creepy twitches, a schizophrenic like cook, and a grandpa that literally drinks blood. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a fantastic example on how to create a fantastic horror film on a low, tight budget. I mean, again, what can I say about this film that hasn't already been said? It is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And in case some of you are wondering, yes, I have heard that A24 is working on a new Texas Chainsaw film. And I just want it to stop. Can we just stop? Why does the Texas Chainsaw Massacre need a sequel? It doesn't need a sequel. Stop! Stop! Okay. I'm cool. I'm fine. I'm cool. Sorry about that. But honestly, it doesn't matter how many shitty sequels or remakes they'll make. There's only one Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And no bad sequel, prequel, or remake will ever take away from that. At number 3 for me is The Fog. My third favorite John Carpenter film. And one that has become a cult classic in more recent years. In this John Carpenter classic, an island known as Antonio Bay is celebrating its 100th anniversary. However, it turns out that the founders of Antonio Bay royally screwed over a group of people, and thus, 100 years later, these group of individuals come back as ghosts who return for revenge. The best way I can describe The Fog is, it's like if you took one of those creepy campfire ghost stories and turned it into a movie. It's a story about revenge and the current generation paying for the sins of the past. It's drenched in atmosphere, has a likable cast of characters. In fact, it has probably the best cast you could have gotten for any horror film at that time. Tom Atkins, Adrienne Barbeau, Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Leigh, PJ Soles. think that's her name now. I don't know. She's changed her name multiple times. You get the idea. The Fog had just the perfect cast for a horror film at that time. Not to mention, the Fog ghosts are really cool. They're kind of like ghost pirates, always attacking with hooks and swords. It's honestly really, really cool. And their design is awesome. Those glowing red eyes that you see in the Fog are such a striking image. It's such a fantastic horror film, and in my opinion, it does deserve a lot more recognition. It's my third favorite Carpenter film. It really does, and it is really nice to see how much of a cult classic it's become in more recent years. If you haven't seen this film, I highly recommend it. At number 2 is John Carpenter's Halloween. Again, I already did a review of this movie last year in October, so I'll keep it brief. Plus, again, what can I say about this film that hasn't already been said? The original Halloween is a masterpiece and was my introduction to horror films. I believe I was 4 years old the first time I recall watching this for the first time, and was blown away by how different it was from what I was watching at the time. The other movies I were watching around this point were the original Spider-Man trilogy and the movie Labyrinth starring David Bowie. This was different. This was dark. This was menacing. This was fucked up. It was metal as hell. And every time I rewatch it, it just gets better. The suspense, the tension, the atmosphere. Laurie Strode is an absolute badass. Dr. Loomis is one of my favorite heroes in any horror film. Michael is still unsettling and scary all these years later. What else can I say? It's John Carpenter's Halloween. Before we get to number 1, though, here are a few honorable mentions. Weapons. I saw this film last year in the theater, and I'm still blown away by it. A great film with suspense, tension, and atmosphere, along with a likable cast of characters despite not being the best as human beings, and a story that legit keeps you guessing as to what's going on. It's because of this film that I'm excited as hell to see what Zach Cregger is going to do with Resident Evil. Sinners. Another horror film I saw last year. While this movie isn't exactly very scary, it is a fantastic film with great characters, a great story, and a lot of emotional moments that legit made me tear up. And there are very few movies that can get me to tear up. Again, it may not be like the scariest movie ever made, but honestly, who cares? It's a fantastic film. And it makes me greatly excited to see what Ryan Coogler has planned next. Suspiria. Arguably one of Dario Argento's most beloved films, Suspiria is like a twisted, grim fairy tale of a story. It's dark, it's twisted, yet also absolutely beautiful due to its use of Technicolor. One of the last films to actually use Technicolor. It may be a confusing film experience, but it's one that will never leave you. Deep Red. This is hands down my favorite Dario Argento film. This movie is like if a slasher film decided to become a murder mystery flick. It's great. The two main characters are incredibly likable. The soundtrack by Goblin is both an absolute banger, but still sounds perfect for a horror film. Along with an absolutely brilliant killer reveal that honestly puts some of the Scream movies to shame. Seriously, if you haven't seen this film or any Dario Argento film, really get on that. This movie is fantastic. Alright, those are my honorable mentions out of the way. Let's finally get to number 1. Number 1 is Jacob's Ladder. This is Still to this day, one of the most underrated and underappreciated horror films ever. The fact that barely anyone talks about this film is so criminal, especially when it created one of the greatest survival horror game series of all time, Silent Hill. Jacob's Ladder tells the story of a man named, well, Jacob, played by Tim Robbins, who you may remember from Shawshank Redemption. Jacob is a Vietnam veteran who had just returned home from the war and now lives his days as a postman in, I believe, New York City. However, he starts to see weird things. These bizarre monsters that apparently only he can seem to see. And on top of that, people keep saying that his memories are wrong. Some say that he's actually dead, even though he's very clearly alive. And the scariest part, we don't know if any of it is real. Are these monsters really there? Or is Jacob just losing his mind? Like, we don't really know. And that's what makes Jacob's Ladder so brilliant and so horrifying. Jacob's Ladder is about a type of fear that is very different than other horror films. In other horror films, like a lot of the ones I've talked about, they discuss fear of ghosts or demons or serial killers. Jacob's Ladder is about the fear of insanity. That frightening feeling that, what if you have finally lost it? What if you've gone insane? And if you did, how would you know? It's a very unsettling and very chilling idea, and that's part of what makes Jacob's Ladder so brilliant. You're as confused as Jacob is throughout this entire movie, wondering what the hell is going on. The movie keeps you guessing until the very end. And that is the one thing about this movie that might throw people off. The ending is either going to be an ending that you like or you hate. I personally really liked the ending and thought it wrapped up things quite nicely, but I can imagine others disagreeing. Even then, even if you don't like the ending, you will enjoy the ride. You will enjoy the experience. Great atmosphere, great suspense, great tension, disturbing as hell imagery, and touching upon a fear that a lot of horror films don't really focus on. Jacob's Ladder is truly a unique experience, and my all-time favorite horror film. Yeah. But now, I want to know what your 10 favorite horror films are. Let me know down in the comments below what your 10 favorite horror films are, or if there's any horror films you guys think I should have added to the list. I could always use more horror films to check out. But yeah, thank you all for watching. If you like what you see here, like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.